Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's UCFS Urban and Community Forestry Series, or Society's Learning Series. So great to have you here today. I know we've got a really great topic that people are eager to hear more about because urban wood use comes up a lot. We want to be taking care of our trees from cradle to grave. And, we wanted to have a higher and better use than might be mulch or just landfilling our trees. And how can we go about doing that? So we have a really great talk from Dwayne Sperber of the Urban Wood Network and Jeff Laufenberg from city of Milwaukee, who has really done some advanced things with urban wood reuse. So as we get started with that, I'm going to share a little bit about the Urban Community Forestry Society, introduce you to our society, and then take it from there. Dwayne, we're getting a little bit of feedback from you. Could you mute your while we get started here? Thanks. Okay, welcome again, everyone, to the Urban and Community Forestry Society's Learning Series. I'm Leslie Burkus. I'm the Executive Director of the Society and really happy to have you here. This is our ongoing series to help you feel more confident in the decisions you're making. So today I'm going to do a quick introduction to the Society. And again, we'll hear from Dwayne and Jeff as they talk about how they work together to implement urban wood reuse in the city of Milwaukee, and also really touching on the Urban Wood Network. And if you're not familiar with the Urban Wood Network, Jeff is the leader of that, has been at the forefront of that society and network, and he'll be sharing more about UWN as we go. And then time for Q&A at the end as well. So thank you to our members who are on the call today. We really appreciate having you here. Your membership dues are what helps make this possible. We also thank our sponsors for helping support the work of UCFS, including this learning series. If you're not a member, we really hope that you'll join when the time is right. For those who are on the call, please drop your name and where you're from in the chat. It's really fun to see where everybody is from. So please say hi to everyone who's on the call today. This webinar is being recorded and we will be sharing it with everyone who registered and posting it on YouTube when we're done. It has been approved for one ISA CEU, and at the end of this webinar, we'll drop the form in the chat so that you can fill in your ISA information, and we will submit that on your behalf. And then you all are on mute, but if at the end when we get to questions, answers, we can bring you off mute, or please just drop a question in the chat as we go. So the Urban and Community Forestry Society, we're here to build the confidence, competence, and camaraderie of all professionals who manage trees and forests to sustain and create more livable communities. So really what we mean by that is we want to help make you, the professional who makes a daily tree care or planting decision, feel more confident in your decisions. You are the people who are making a who, what, where, when, why, and how decision of how trees go in the ground or come out, or any of the number of things you need to do to care for trees. And we need you. We have big tree planting goals, and we want to make sure that you feel like you are supported in those decisions, and understand you have a network of people across the world who are doing the same work. So how can we connect you and make sure that you're getting more information? This learning series webinar being a good example of that. Just a few ways that you can connect with this society. Hopefully you're getting City Trees in your inbox already. This is an open access publication and really provides great information from personal interest stories to technical how-tos. One of the stories from last year was how do we keep our forestry crews safe as heat continues to rise in our communities. So a lot of great articles in that way. So hopefully you're signed up for it. A members only opportunity that will be coming up very soon is our mentorship program. So we don't have this quite launched yet, but it will be open by the end of the year, because you can sign up to be a mentor or mentee and really get that kind of close-knit relationship with somebody who is in the field and help guide you on your path within urban forestry. So be on the lookout for that. Our annual conference is now open. Registration opened on July 30th. Early bird registration for the Partners of Community Forestry portion of the conference ended this week, but you can still sign up. The Urban and Community Forestries Conference is on Tuesday, November 19th. And then the 20th and 21st, we go into the Partners in Community Forestry Conference with Arbor Day Foundation and a number of other partners as well. So we'll drop the link in the chat for that. Please sign up for the conference. There's nothing like a conference to feel connected with those who are doing the same work as you, and you really will feel energized once you're there. The Municipal Forestry Institute is now accepting applications as well. If you have ever heard of MFI or have been with somebody who has gone to MFI, you've probably heard about what a great networking opportunity is and how you really will feel connected to those who are doing the same work as you. This is a week-long intensive where we teach you how to be a leader within urban forestry. It's beyond arboriculture. It's not proper planting, proper pruning. This is how do you identify what kind of leader you want to be within urban forestry? How do you partner with people in your community? And how do you push your urban forestry program to the next level? So applications are open. We will be in Scotts Valley, Santa Cruz, California. So a really awesome location. The picture on the left-hand side are some redwood trees that we will be among while we are there. So hopefully you will sign up, and we'll drop a link in the chat for the application as well. Usually I just share one of our upcoming learning series, but we have so much coming up that I had to just make a list now. So in September, we have our Young and Emerging Professionals virtual meetup. That is for urban foresters age 35 and under. Is your tree protection ordinance constitutional? That is going to be coming up at the end of September. A new one really focused on those on the West Coast who are now experiencing EAB. But Dwayne, I saw your slides. You're going to kick off with some information about EAB. A lot of us are still dealing with the ramifications of that. So we have a really great webinar with 4 speakers talking about current status of EAB, how to manage it, and what the next steps are. It is free for members. Non-members, it will be $20. Hopefully you'll join us for that. And then in October, Clearing the Backlog. It is going to be from the city of Mississauga, Canada, where they had 2,000 trees, stumps they needed to clear. They did it in about 2 months. So if that piques your interest of how you can clear the backlog of stumps, join us for that one. And finally, once again, thank you to our members for joining us today. You are who make this possible. You are who make this network possible. If you're not a member, come be with your tree people. We really hope that you'll join us soon. Jeff, I am going to stop, and Dwayne, I'm stopping sharing. I'm kicking it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Give me a minute. Okay, can you see everything?
Looks like it's getting, yep, we're good to go.
And you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Leslie, for the introduction. And my name is Dwayne Sperber. I'm the owner of Woodward Urban Forest Products, and I'm a founding member of the Urban Wood Network. And, excuse me one second here. And so today we're going to discuss the pathways that lead to the highest and best use of urban and community forest wood resources, namely urban wood. And it's understood that living trees are the highest and best use. The topics today, however, include the practices or the journey that begins when trees have reached the end of their useful living standing life. And this journey began for me and many others here in the Midwest in 2003, when the emerald ash borer made its intentions very clear here. And this scene you see here became familiar throughout the Midwest. And while communities were faced with developing their response plans to EAB, some in the private sector came together with a response all their own. And their mission statement was seemingly simple. We should utilize all of these trees. And that declaration, it seems, was the beginning of a loosely held urban wood movement here in the Midwest. Public and private efforts emerged to begin capturing and processing ash and other species being removed from urban and community forests into lumber. Fueling this effort was the U.S. Forest Service, who reported that if recovered and repurposed, wood from our country's urban and community forests could produce more than 7 billion board feet of lumber each year. That number motivated a great many to capture and process urban logs, again, ash or otherwise. And here's what that journey looked like. It's important to note here that the urban wood journey begins and ends with the thoughtful planting and care of urban and community trees. I'd also like to note that the word harvest in reference to trees is not a bad word, but it's not what the urban wood industry does. Urban wood comes from trees removed for reasons other than their harvest. Trees that must be removed due to natural mortality, death, disease, insect, or other circumstance. And it's important to note, or excuse me, each of these images that you see here represents an entry point that creates a full circle process to ensure the highest and best use of urban and community forest wood resources, which helps you minimize waste and also helps extend the benefits of trees into the built environment through the use of urban wood. However, it is necessary to understand how your role how your piece of the circle is reliant on the one behind you and the one in front of you. And this was not fully understood by these early pioneers. Each was doing good and noble work, but in resemblance of a supply chain was fragmented. We all had our specialty, our own little box, but there was no clear pathway between us. Well, we responded. Efforts here in the Midwest helped to inspire what is today a national nonprofit membership organization, the Urban Wood Network, or UWN. UWN works to advance the sustainable recovery and the highest and best use of the products of urban and community forest. We are connecting tree managers, public and private arborists, lumber producers, makers, and other stakeholders to connect all links in the urban wood supply chain. Each image, each role represented in this photo collage is equally important. But today we're going to focus on the role of the municipal forest manager. And I am very happy to introduce Jeff Laufenberg of the City of Milwaukee's Forestry Services. Jeff?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I'm glad to be here. My name is Jeff Laufenberg. I'm the Urban Forestry District Manager, or one of 3 Urban Forestry District Managers for the City of Milwaukee Forestry Services Department. I've been working for the City of Milwaukee for about 18 years. I oversee 1/3 of the city's operations on a daily basis out of my yard. And I'm an ISA certified arborist, member of the UCFS. I'm gonna get that right. Member of the Society of Municipal Forestry before that. And I have a big interest in our recycling of urban wood and putting this resource to its best use. I have to say before I get started that I can't take credit for any of the City of Milwaukee's current program. This was developed about 14 years ago by my boss and his boss prior to him. And so I was working here at that time and saw it implemented, was kind of out in the field with a lot of this stuff as it got put into place, but I didn't develop it myself. I'm not an expert necessarily, but I know a bit about it and how it functions. So I'm hopefully able to answer a lot of the questions for you guys today about what it is that we do here. So first, to talk a little bit about our urban forest for the City of Milwaukee. We manage about 194,000 street trees in the City of Milwaukee. We have about 205,000 sites overall, which puts us at a current percentage of stocking at about 94.5%. It's a little lower than we'd like, and we're trying to build that back up. But we've been able to maintain that pretty consistently for the past decade or so. On average, yearly, we remove about 3,600 trees. That's an average over the past 10 years. Generally speaking, we're able to keep up and plant just as many trees on a yearly basis as we take out. Typically, our average would be 3,600 planted every year. You can see in this graphic, it's a little bit less than that due to 2020 during COVID. We had to scale back a little bit during that time for operational needs with everything that was going on with COVID. So unfortunately, we got a little bit of catch up to do, which we're hoping to get done in the next few years. Overall, that street tree population provides a lot of benefits to the City of Milwaukee residents, and that's our main job in forestry services here, is to help maintain and improve that canopy through our efforts. iTree values, places a lot of value on that resource, and part of what our job is as well is to just help people understand that this urban forest has value, has a lot of benefits that they need to understand and really not take for granted. Overall, iTree values our street tree population about $480 million, with an annual value in benefits of about $1 million a year through CO2 uptake and sequestration, stormwater management, and air pollution. So just some of the quick overview of our current urban forest and the benefits we get from it. All right, you can go to the next slide. All right, so first thing I'm going to talk about is kind of just the process that we use to remove trees in the City of Milwaukee. this might be familiar to a lot of people, but we do our tree removals in stages. We're a pretty urban environment for the most part throughout the entire city. We have a lot of obstacles and targets that are very close to our trees, and so we have to do a lot of this in stages. First stage being a topping where we take off the branches. A lot of the time that's through some very technical rigging, just depending on the obstacles involved and proximity to other things. We can't do a lot of whole tree removals at one time, flopping or dropping an entire tree at once, just because there's not room with all of our the urban environment that we're in, parked cars and small streets and things like that. So we have to do this in pieces. The other reason we do it that way is because, as you know, it's pretty equipment intensive to remove large trees, and so we have different pieces of equipment that we use for different portions of this. And for the topping part, we're using obviously large lift trucks as well as chippers. Our old method of removals, basically we would chip everything that we could possibly fit through a chipper, and we have fairly decent sized chippers, so that's anything up to 10 to 12 inches in diameter. Sometimes we can go a little bit higher, but we don't like to stress our equipment quite that much. But basically in the past it was anything that fits through, we would fit through a chipper. After that's done, you know we will move on to the removal of the trunk. Yep, thanks, Dwayne. So we top the tree, take all the branches off, and then we'll move to a trunk removal. Now, this requires other equipment, other skill sets and things like that. So a lot of times we'll have trunks, in the past anyways, standing for long periods of time. Hundreds of trunks throughout the city, just standing like you see in this picture, until we're able to put a crew together with different heavy equipment to go and pick it up. That requires things like a apprentice loader or a big grapple truck that has a claw that can pick up logs and load it onto itself and other dump trucks. And that's always been a very seasonal thing for us due to the need for this special equipment that we don't always have access to. Here's a picture of a PL picking up some logs in the street after a trunk was removed. And that grapple truck is one that we don't have our own equipment. We share a lot of equipment with other departments, and this being a very versatile piece of equipment, forestry doesn't have our own, and so we always have to ask for it. And we have to reserve it and compete with other departments that use it for different things. So it's always kind of been a challenge for us to have that equipment, whenever we need it. So we would typically have to do this, removal process in, seasonally, where we had access to that grapple truck, which was all right. I mean, it allowed for some efficiency in that we're doing a lot of trunks all at once. We do them quickly and fast, and we get good at it. But at the same time, we're only doing it at certain parts of the year, and then we have these large standing trunks for longer periods of times. They're an eyesore. People don't necessarily like to have those sitting there for months on end. So it's always been a complaint that we've had. After the trunk is removed, the next step for us would typically be to, well, you want to go back? Yeah, right there. Our old process, no, one back from that. The pretty picture of the landfill. There you go. So our old process was basically to take those trunks, those large pieces of solid wood, anything that wasn't chipped, and take it and to our transfer station, put it over the scales where they weigh it, and basically pay for the dumping of our wood into landfills. That was, you can see on the screen there, at the time before we started our urban wood recycling program, that was on average about 1,800 tons annually that went over the scales and put into a landfill. At a cost of about $110,000. Now those are dollars converted to 2024 dollars, just for some reference. But that was the amount of money we were spending annually on just putting trees into a landfill, where we get no use out of them. And that there's obviously a big downside to that, taking a resource and just throwing it away, so to speak. Dwayne talked about a little bit earlier how EAB and the onset of emerald ash borer really was a driving force to push for utilizing our urban wood resource. With the city of Milwaukee, we were pretty proactive with emerald ash borer management, and we put a treatment program in place, and we really haven't lost many, if any, trees to emerald ash borer specifically. We haven't had a giant influx in tree removals due to EAB, and so that wasn't part of what drove us to do this, but it was seeing that this was sort of becoming a bigger and bigger push within the industry that made us want to, be a part of it. And there's no reason to not utilize this resource under normal circumstances, regardless of whether there's an invasive species pushing higher removals and more dead trees. So we wanted to try to move towards that, regardless of the factors pushing us. So at the time, basically what we started doing was thinking of what's a better way to utilize this resource, and what do we do instead of taking our trees and putting them into a landfill. A lot of the suggestions or things that we heard at the time, or you might have heard, is why not take those logs and put them somewhere where the public, your residents, can have access to them. They might use them for firewood or take them for other uses, for their own needs. So why not have like a public yard where we could stockpile these, and people, your citizens and residents can have access to that resource. Well, for us, we're a large municipality, and that's not really a feasible thing when it comes to liability management of the site. Obviously large piles of big heavy objects that aren't necessarily all that stable, and then people moving around and picking through them is a pretty big safety issue. So liability wise, that wasn't really a good option for us. And then there's other concerns in terms of additional processing costs to cut those logs up into smaller pieces or firewood size, things like that. And then you have the idea of unfair cherry picking. If commercial operation wants to come in with bigger equipment and take all the good stuff out of there, then what are you really leaving for your residents? So that was never anything we really kind of considered, just based on our size. The other thing you hear a lot about is, well, this is a wood resource. Why aren't we finding somebody to buy it from us? Why don't we sell this? But what a lot of people don't realize is that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that the overall, I don't want to call it quality of the wood in our urban trees is not the greatest. This isn't grown stands in a managed forest. So the overall quality is a little bit lower, right? It has embedded metals, a lot of crooked stems, crooked branches, shorter pieces. They're not ideal lengths, a lot of knots, knotty sections, and then decay and defects, all over the place. Our urban trees have a lot of these problems, and it's not the ideal wood for a mill to get or to want to necessarily pay for, to process into lumber, because you're going to be dealing with all of these headaches. So what about the stuff that you can't sell? Not every mill they might be interested in some of it, but not necessarily wanting to take all the junk that's left over, all the stuff that's harder to deal with. So, getting into a process of sorting or grading and then going through bidding for lots of wood of different sizes and quality, that was something that we didn't necessarily want to go down that road of either. We wanted something where, we could take care of all this resource in one fell swoop, so to speak, and have it managed rather than breaking it up into smaller chunks. That we're not the experts in dealing with that. So we didn't want to necessarily take on that extra burden of managing, multiple streams of resources. So the first thing we realized is we kind of did need to know more about what it was that we were, what the resource was that we had, and starting to look for some partners in all this. So if you want to go to the next slide, Dwayne. So the first thing we did back in 2010 was we started some pilots and some trials, and we reached out to some local mills to try to put together some grant proposals to get some funding for this, so that we could actually get data on this resource and what it actually was going to be made up of, and what were viable options for using it. So we worked with some grant funding and some local mills to basically set up a system to get them some of these large pieces of wood from our trees, and they were basically working through it, seeing what they could use, milling it, checking it out, finding out what was usable versus what in this stream on average was usable for them in different resources as far as milled wood, wood chips, what they had to grind, what they could make into high level products versus pallets and blocking, things like that. So through the course of 2010, we got a lot of that information back, and what we found was basically that in general, only about 30% of the wood that we sent through to these locations was suitable for sawmill operations, for making into like lumber and other higher end products. Um, and our problem, again, like I said, was we can't just get rid of 30% and have the 70% left that we're still having to deal with. That doesn't make for an effective program for us, or necessarily a cost-effective program. So how do we deal with the whole amount rather than just the 30% that a sawmill may really want? The other thing we found was approximately 35% of the wood that was sent to them may contain some sort of embedded metal or other materials, nails, screws, bolts, just anything that might end up in an urban tree, which may surprise you. There's a lot of stuff that can end up in an urban tree. It's shocking sometimes the things you'll run into. So instead, after getting all this information, and I think part of it was the partners that we had on this grant project, we sort of started to realize how things maybe could work with them in terms of, the dumpsters you see in this picture that were used for this trial weren't necessarily, they're more functional, I think, than anything. It was like, how are we going to get it there to get this information? We'll use these dumpsters, and that way, it's a nice, easy thing. But as we started doing this, we started thinking about scaling this up to bigger processes and using all of our resources, and would this work or not? Um, and I think that's when we started realizing this might be a viable type thing with some of the partners, and they started saying this might be a viable resource for them. So that developed over a couple of years where we worked on this, these trials and getting this information, and then we put out a request for proposal in 2014. Asking anybody who was interested to put forth a proposal to utilize this resource, and we put some parameters on it to make sure that it was going to be beneficial to us. Some of that was, we asked them to define how it was going to be loaded and transported from our site to theirs, and who was responsible for certain things. We did settle on this 30-yard dumpster or container model where it was easy for us because in our yards we have very tight spaces, and this was a nice easy way to keep it all nice and tight within our yards by loading and unloading into these dumpsters, and then transporting those to whatever site they might be going to. Some of the other parameters were they had to take all the material regardless of quality that was put in there. No, we didn't put any brush or anything like that. This was all wood product, but it's a varying sizes, varying quality, both diameter and length. We try to make sure we're cutting everything to, as big a pieces as possible for them. But at the same time, they kind of got to take everything that comes along in that. Not just the nice pieces of great species. They had to be able to appropriately store and process the materials in a timely manner to make sure that this resource wasn't rotting away. They couldn't just stockpile it and let it, decay. And then they had to be responsive in terms of, turnaround times and getting these dumpsters picked up and swapped out at our location. So those are some of the basic parameters we put on them to make this a usable type thing for us. And after all that, we had two successful organizations that made bids that we started this program with back in 2014. And if you want to go to the next slide. So now we do, like I said, offload at our yards, each of our 3 yards, right in that location into those dumpsters. And then we call for, a transport company comes and swaps it out. They bring us an empty one and take the full one away, and they transport it to one of the partner mills that we have and just drop it off there. The cost for us now is basically the city does pay for the transportation costs through this, but that cost is considerably less. It's about 45 to 50% less of a cost to do transport of the materials than it was to take it over the scales and to landfill it. Now, in the grand scheme of things, in our big budget and everything, it's not a gigantic savings. We're on average annually, depending on the amount of wood we have, it's $60,000 to $100,000 in savings over the course of the year, which isn't a terribly huge amount. But the main point is that it saves us money. We don't lose money on this. We're not paying as much for the disposal of this thing, and the resource is going to its highest best use. So it's being utilized in a much better way than it had been in the past. Um, Over the course of the last 10 years, 12 years that we've been doing this, our average tonnage has actually even gone up. We're putting more usable wood into these boxes. Our crews are getting better at um, cutting what's usable and sending that into these boxes rather than just chipping up everything that we can fit through a chipper. So if something's usable, we'll send it, through to be recycled rather than just chipping everything that's possible. So we're getting better, and we're up to around 3,000 tons a year versus the 1,800 tons that we landfilled back, before this started. Some of the big things to keep in mind with this is, that I would stress is you really need to look for good partners in this. And that's what they are, is, they put out a bid for this type of work, or a request for, proposals. They put out a proposal to be a part of this, but at the same time, they're partners in this. This is a resource stream that needs to be managed. It goes up and down over the course of the year and seasons, and they really need to kind of be a partner in doing that, or in managing it, to make it successful for everybody. Like I said, we've increased the percentage, or the amount of wood that we're sending to them. They've been very good at being able to meet those needs as we've increased the volume of that. And they need to be able to manage the resource. So that's a key factor for us, is this wood, and we've had problems with it in the past, with some partners that we've had that are no longer on the project, but where they weren't able to manage the volume that quickly. And so there were logs rotting in yards, not being taken care of, and so they've had to be kind of cut out over the years because the resource just wasn't being managed well. So that's one of the key things, is finding good, reliable partners and making sure that they understand what the resource is and what that stream is going to be that they're going to be getting, because they have to be able to manage it effectively, in the ebbs and flows, even when it's, up seasonally or due to storms. And that's one thing that we've been really lucky with, one of our partners in particular. The other thing is a good, responsive and timely transportation company. If it's a separate entity, that's, we contract with a separate entity to do the transportation between the locations. And if they're not on top of it, if they're not timely in turning around, it can be challenging. We have 3 different yards that we work out of, and that's where we're going to with all of our logs, all our wood, into our own actual forestry yards and loading these dumpsters. And we don't have a lot of space, like I said, so we need the transport company to be timely. They have a 1-day response time according to the contract, that they're supposed to be able to come in, swap out a container for a new one, and get that transported up to our mill, or our partner mill, I should say. And when they're not able to do that or keep up during the busy times, we'll call for 5 swaps in a day with 3 dumpsters, meaning, we're having them swap 3 full ones out, and we're filling, 2 or 3 more as they're replacing them and coming back for those extra dumpsters. So it's an important thing that they're able to keep up with that. Otherwise, it can all fall apart. We can stockpile a little wood in our yards as needed if we have full dumpsters, but it's something that's really important. It's getting these other entities kind of on board or able to accommodate the scale that you might be working at. And here's an example on the next slide of a situation where this kind of really bore out for us. Is in August of 2021, we had a massive, kind of unprecedented. Nobody I've worked with has seen this level of storm through the city of Milwaukee in the past. We had something like 3,800 calls for service. emergency service over the course of several days, all due to this one storm. And we lost somewhere in the range of like 500 street trees. And so we were doing nothing but, removing trees for a straight week and then cleaning up for another, 3 weeks after that. Because of that, we had to stockpile all this wood in a lot in the city, where we were able to just basically dump them because we just couldn't do anything with them, in a timely enough manner to be able to get through and get all this cleaned up. But the companies and partners that we were working for were able to adjust to that huge increase in volume. And I think it was only over a matter of another month or so that all this, and this picture doesn't really do it justice as to how long this pile was, how big it was, and how big those pieces of wood are. But over the course of the next, several weeks, we were able to get all this transported through this model of loading dumpsters and taking them from the city to this location out of this area. And so it kind of bore out the scalability of this in the sense that you're doing it in these little chunks, these little, one dumpster at a time, so to speak. But we were able to scale up in a short period of time to be able to get this all taken care of within a matter of weeks after the storm was done. So overall, that's kind of how our process works. Some of the benefits that I wanted to talk about real quick, just to recap, obviously there's a cost savings for us. It's not considerably large, it's not huge, but it's a savings. So we're saving money, and in some ways it's enough to help leverage for some of the equipment that we use for this. We don't have our own PLs, like I said, our own grapple trucks, but we should be getting our own in the next year or so. And part of that, I think, is leveraging some of the savings that we get through this program and the need for that equipment to sustain this program, as well as some of our other operations. It's a much better use and value you get out of these materials. You're using it for lumber, finished products, mulch, biofuel, biochar now. You get a lot better use out of it than just landfilling it. There's some operational efficiencies. We're transporting all this wood on a regular basis back to where our home base is every day. So we're going back there anyways, and we're just unloading at our yards. And then it's being taken from us from that point. We're not traveling all the way to transfer stations throughout the city to dump it in these other locations to go into the landfill. So there's a little bit of operational efficiency there for us a lot of the times as well. We also do get some finished lumber products back from the mill. We have an agreement where if we're requesting something, they'll make it for us and get us back. We don't ask for lots by any means. We've had a few, about maybe half a dozen to a dozen tables made of this urban wood throughout the city and in different locations. So they're nice showpieces to help people see the benefits of utilizing urban wood and how nice it can actually look. And then the other thing to realize is that this can be a scalable thing. So depending on how much you produce, how big your operation is, this can be expanded, and it's really just a matter of cost of the per load sent from your location to wherever your partner mill might be, and that can vary a lot too. The mill that we partner with is quite a ways outside of Milwaukee. It's probably about a half an hour or so away, maybe 45 minutes or so from some of our yards. So that transportation cost is considerably high in that respect. If you're in an area where maybe a little bit more rural, or you just have better options, partners closer, those transportation costs could be considerably less or even non-existent if you might have access to a common area where you can dump wood and your partners can pick it up from, or even transporting directly to them, if that's not a prohibitive type cost. So overall, the financial benefits aren't necessarily gigantic, but they're there. And it's all these other benefits that go along with it that really make this a successful program. I can get into some of the drawbacks, but I don't want to take up too much time. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that stuff later. I want to kind of kick it back to Dwayne so that he has time to go over his end of things.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. That was wonderful. And can everybody still hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Well, we've seen this picture a lot here. This is a typical municipal load. I work with one of the partner mills that Jeff was referring to, And I think we've been probably the longest with Milwaukee. And this is typically what we receive. And our agreement with Milwaukee and other municipalities and private tree care companies that we have no length or diameter requirements, and we receive basically the entire production of a tree removal. But material must be brought to our yard. And there is no tipping fee for a municipality when this municipality is really committing to and considering the highest use at the time of removal. Meaning when it's safe and practical, we encourage proper sawing methods and to keep portions as long as possible. And as Jeff said, around 25 to 30% of what you see here is millable, and the rest goes to other products we produce. And this year, we are beginning to receive chips. We found this better serves the municipality's needs, as I'm sure that all of you have been overrun with chips at some point. And what you see here is the final product, which is animal bedding. We are in the mill, as Jeff said, is north of the city, an agricultural area. And this animal bedding, these chips can fill a need in that area. And this is produced right here at the sawmill. And, you know, Jeff talked about the value of partners, and I talked about kind of the virtuous circle of all the people involved here. And the people around this container here of this animal bedding really are key partners. There's a state urban forestry manager there, a furniture manufacturer, a UWN leader, mill representatives. And it's important that all of the players at every stage of a tree's life, you know, gather together and understand that this ugly container full of animal bedding, it should be important to the furniture manufacturer to understand that this is how we get to that higher use, you know, the wood products. And this is just a small glimpse of the log yard. And this pile you see here is the result of nearly constant sorting. But every log here avoided, you know, the waste streams, the other options that Jeff mentioned, you know, particularly the landfill or the chipper. And some of the diameters you see here, you know, there's equipment out there that can chip it, but there were efficiencies and cost savings in diverting this material to the sawmill. And this picture is significant, or should be significant to you, because it demonstrates the reality of sourcing urban logs. Traditional mills would never consider the logs in this or the previous image, because remember, we're not after the best logs. We don't harvest for the best logs. We receive what nature gives us. Nature is in control of our inventory. And we do have a wood miser, but we primarily use a circle mill. And that circle mill has been modified to be able to mill these shorter logs. And the lumber from these shorter logs do have a purpose. They can minimize waste. These can go into shorter applications, stair treads, for example. And this stack of maple logs, for example, went into creating tabletops. And this is really what we're after. This photo represents what makes this whole model here at the mill work. We produce and supply kiln-dried urban lumber and other value-added products exclusively in urban wood. However, this lumber, even though it meets the traditional standards expected by the industry, lumber as a whole has been considered, graded, specified, sourced, and used much the same way over a century. And this urban wood is virtually a new wood product, controlled again in every way by nature. And if your community is seeking the highest and best use of your urban and community forest wood resources, partnering with those who are committed to introducing this wood and creating market awareness and demand for urban wood products will help your program be successful and sustainable. And here is where I focus more than half of my time as a supplier of this resource. I spend my time in this setting or something similar to this setting. Architects, interior designers, and others who collaborate on the built environment are included in that virtuous circle of that photo collage that leads to your successful highest use goals. This sector, these designers, these materials influencers, they can help improve the health of the planet and people by giving careful thought to how they evaluate the products they specify. The American Institute of Architects developed the Architectural and Design Materials Pledge, for example, to inspire a positive shift in materials specification. And urban wood is a response. And your community, your forest that you take care of is a part of that. So they play an important role in unlocking the full worth of your urban and community forest. And UWN, in my company, as being affiliated with UWN, is working hard to effectively reach this audience. So they, in a sense, are another partner of yours. And what's really making UWN advance this industry across the country is this. I'm very pleased and excited to introduce the USRW, which is Urban Salvaged and Reclaimed Wood. USRW is the first ever wood standards for North America. And these standards will be a game changer for the industry, as well as municipal urban wood utilization programs. And for the first time, will allow chain of custody and certification for urban wood known as USRW Certified Urban Wood. And USRW certification is exclusively for Urban Wood Network members and will ensure that the sourcing, the processing, quality, and labeling of urban wood has met industry standards. And this is a game changer for all of us here on this call. And the two documents beside it, I don't expect you to be able to read those, but that's just kind of one of the assets, one of the tools we use and will be using more and more to introduce USRW to those architects, to those designers, and so on and so forth. And so whether your community is pursuing SFI certification or the Tree City USA Growth Award or other accreditations, or if you're supporting your community's own sustainability goals without formal recognition or certification, there is not a one-size-fits-all program. You have the best understanding of your capacity. Excuse me. And the Milwaukee model, as Jeff said, is scalable. It mostly involves, though, changing attitudes and practices related to the management of your removals, and that can take many forms. And I think it's really important to note here, and Jeff, you did a good job pointing this out, the failed or short-lived municipal urban wood utilization programs that I've observed over the years have all had one thing in common missing. They did not recognize their role and the role of others to complete the full circle demonstrated in those collage photos that I shared earlier. For example, the language used in Milwaukee's agreement for contractors who receive their material includes the following, and I'm reading this: must have desire to create increased market awareness and demand for urban forest products and establish a dependable supply chain capable of supporting a sustainable local wood utilization market. In fact, the use of variations of the words market development are used more than 40 times in their agreement. So UWN is helping Milwaukee achieve their goals. Milwaukee is helping UWN achieve our goals. So we are working as a team and we are partners in the true sense of the definition. The county that I live in here outside of Milwaukee includes the following language in their program. They require their contractors to incorporate sustainable models for urban wood utilization to ensure consistent local markets and consistency and alignment with statewide and national urban wood industry utilization goals and practices such as the Urban Wood Network. So they were able to refer to our network in their plan. So no matter the capacity of your community, there are multiple entry points to organize a program. And I wanted to point out quickly here that this is an urban wood utilization program of a smaller community here in Wisconsin. And what's making it successful is that this community reached out to UWN members in their region, and they came to an agreement, and the city informs a UWN member that these trees on this street will be removed on this day, and if you would like them to mark the trees appropriately and in an agreed upon method of marking. The trees are then removed and left behind, and it is agreed that within a certain time frame that UWN member will come and get these trees to avoid any further liability. And this is a very good and easy entry point for a community to begin fulfilling their utilization goals. This is an example of the container model used by a private company or even another community. This was a scheduled removal, massive removals. And events like that for a community are highly orchestrated. You know, they all descend on one golf course or one park or one area to remove X amount of trees. A container can be strategically marked with equipment available to load those containers, and it goes up to our mill. As a matter of fact, the wood and several containers from this project came to the mill. This is a community outside of Milwaukee that does exactly what Milwaukee does. They may just keep one 30 cubic yard container in their yard, and when it's full, they make a call. And again, this is not stressing the equipment or their staff, and it is providing efficiencies. And again, if not a cost neutral situation, it's an outright cost savings situation. So it can begin here. This is another shot of our mill. I seem to like being here. Our story begins here and can begin here. And the people in this image, they do nearly form a circle in this actual photo. And this recent tour of the sawmill included several municipal foresters from in and around the Milwaukee area and leadership from their communities. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Forest Products and their urban forestry people were there. The United States Forest Service was there. A wood-using manufacturer and an architect were in this crowd. And I included this image because we're confronting this vision together with everybody around the table. And by doing so, it will lead all of us to smarter and more sustainable solutions for whatever piece we have in that virtuous circle. And it's working. It's working here in Milwaukee and around the country. And I'm just about done here. This is a photo of the newly expanded Baird Center in downtown Milwaukee. It's a conference center. This is a $400 million expansion that attracts audiences from all over the world. And urban wood is front and center. And this is an example of a recent application that my company supplied. It's referred to as a social stair. And it's a functional feature created entirely with urban ash that was sourced from trees removed in the Milwaukee region. And this application would never have happened without the commitment of municipal foresters who understand their role in that virtuous circle that forms the urban wood supply chain. And this is an image of the ribbon cutting on May 16th of this year. You know, urban wood has a way of bringing folks together. After all, urban wood comes from the trees where we live, where we work, and where we play. And everyone in this audience in the photo has a role in your urban and community forest. And this urban wood journey to the Baird Center would not have happened without many of you on this call. Trees first, wood next. And that concludes what I would like to say. And I'm certain that Leslie will open this up to questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne, and thanks, Jeff. That was so great. I really appreciate it. As we're wrapping up here towards the end of the hour, or top of the hour, I should say, we will be dropping the CEU form in the chat. So if you're looking for ISA CEUs, look for that in the chat. And start dropping your questions in there too. Meg has already provided us a few questions, Jeff and Dwayne. And one of those is, you've touched on it a little bit, but do you have data on where the wood is going and being used for? So Jeff, maybe you want to share a little bit about, is Milwaukee, the city, tracking where the different products are going and what the end product is?
So the city itself does not track that. We do track over the years the different partners that we've worked with, how much of that wood resource goes to each partner. And then there is language in the agreements with them as far as sort of reporting back annual data on, kind of the products that are made for it. So like, board feet produced, what percentage of the supply that they've been able to mill versus going to other streams. So we get that information back, but mostly the end product and usage is more on the end of the mill and the partner that's doing that.
Yeah.
And I'll add that I mentioned kind of briefly about the USR standards and certification, and a part of that is what's called ancestry, which is how our material will be traced. In our industry, even after 20 years, we never really have quantified everything and pulled that data together. So that's a great question. But all of the tracing applications that are coming to light now and being utilized, we're going to be able to help gather and report that data very soon. But this has been a long time coming.
Yeah. Let's see. So there's a question about EAB, which I think maybe we'll save for a future webinar. Jeff, you might be getting a contact about how Milwaukee's been so successful in keeping their ash trees around. And the question from Meg was already answered in the chat, but I did want to put it out to you, Dwayne, in case you didn't see it. We have a person on here from Canada and asking about UWN's kind of overall makeup and if they're the umbrella organization for mills and urban wood utilizers throughout the country, throughout the U.S., and if you have plans to have some Canadians enter into the UWN.
I believe we already do, and I'm sorry I can't tell you who that is, but I believe they appear on our website. And
Okay.
sorry, I'm having some computer issues here, but
Yep.
we are considered an international organization.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah. And the answer, I think, was already brought here from Jennifer, saying that you've had some Canadian members in the past, but don't have anyone currently, and really want to start working on bringing in more members from across the globe.
right, and I had my contact information up there, and Jeff and I would both agreed that I can very much so. I'm open to helping guide you to the right people, if not helping you directly, and Jeff agreed to do the same. So certainly contact us and maybe share our contact information in a follow-up email.
Well, there's a few more questions, but I wanted to throw in here your idea of the circle, Dwayne, is so impactful. Like, it's nothing if there's not an end market for this. Like, who is going to take this product and use it and make sure that it's doing what we wanted it to? So your comment about working with interior designers, architects, I think is really kind of one of the crux. If we're thinking about a circle, it all works together, but it's an important part of that circle. So how are you doing that marketing? And do you have any advice to others across the country to figure out what that end product source will be or where it will go in the end?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. And again, you might have remembered I said in the early days, each of those pictures is its own webinar. But our pursuit, the urban wood industry's pursuit to advance this recovery in the highest and best use, is very much so intertwined and reliant on the markets of which we live in. And there must be that end market. And what makes it, I don't want to say difficult, but the opportunity exists that the world has been, we're all pretty spoiled. Again, wood's been, if you want a board, you go get it, you know what it's going to look like. We are in the recycling industry. And again, we're focused purely on what the forest gives us. Well, all of that knowledge has to be downloaded in the architects, interior designers, and even those that source wood that's been specified need to know that the pathways to sourcing this wood can be differently, and they need to understand the grades. And I'll tell you, this USRW standards and certification is going to make that process easier to an easier download to those who have influence over materials. So we've got major furniture manufacturers specifying and utilizing urban wood. I work with some of the largest architects here in the Midwest that are confident in specifying, because urban wood being in a $400 million project must mean they're gaining confidence in it, in the source. So the stronger that we make our urban wood network and that we're all standardizing and using the same language is going to build this. So how we're doing this? Well, we're doing it right now. And we need members. We need to develop our discipleship out there. We need more and more members. So we're helping states organize statewide networks. For example, I'm a part of the Wisconsin chapter of the UW of the Urban Wood Network. And so we visit our website to learn more, the Urban Wood Network website. It's in the middle of kind of being updated right now, which is why I left my information. But I'm on the membership committee, and I've brought a lot of people to this. So reach out when you're ready.
Yep. Well, we're at the top of the hour. If you need to drop off, feel free. We're going to stay on for just a little bit longer. I see a great question from Savannah. And I also see in the chat that the ISACEU form isn't accepting responses. I'm sure Carla is working on that behind the scenes right now. It's probably just a matter of clicking on the right button. We will follow up with you with the form. Carla says, 1 sec, she's on it. So hold on, and we'll send it out afterwards as well. So again, if you need to drop off, feel free. We will follow up in an email after this. Jeff, I think that's probably more of a question for you. Savannah, I know I've worked with her quite a bit, is new to create an urban forestry program in her city in Florida. But I think it applies to a lot of people. How do you change the thought process from a municipal level to want to even try this? It's easy to send it to the landfill. It's too complicated to take on all these steps. So what did you do to change perspectives? Did you reach out to the partners first or work with the city internally? And Dwayne, you probably have some perspective too, but we'll start with Jeff.
Well, I think like Dwayne mentioned earlier, there was an external push for the industry in general with emerald ash borer, because of people's familiarity with Dutch elm disease back in the day and how devastating that was to our elm tree populations. Especially like the city of Milwaukee was right there with everybody else, where it was just removing elm trees all day long for weeks on end, years on end. And then the just devastation that led to on the streets, that created a situation where that made us want to put something in place to help protect our ash trees. But again, that was, what do we do with all this wood that's going to be removed with the onset of emerald ash borer? Really drove a lot of this, because it was just seen as like an obvious waste, when it was right in everybody's faces, right? So that was one of the things that kind of helped to drive it, I think, as an industry. As far as organizationally, how do you kind of change that mindset? I think you got to have strong leaders that have, that understand the bigger picture, and are at least willing to ask the questions and start to delve into it. We didn't necessarily know what this was going to look like, or if it would even be feasible, until we started doing some trials, and we started reaching out and talking to these partner organizations, to get their feedback. We're municipal arborists. We're experts in a narrow field of this industry, and milling and wood processing and all those things are not our area of expertise. So we needed to reach out to those other organizations and get their take on things, and try to figure out ways that potentially something like this could work, or what they needed from us, and what we would need from them. And having that conversation is the most important thing. From there, I think it just went to, all right, there's some potential here. Now, it definitely, I think, helped to have some grant funding to try some of this stuff out, because nobody's really getting extra money thrown at them by their own internal governments to just try something new. Unless there's something behind it, or there's a dramatic cost savings that there's pretty much guaranteed. So grants are a huge part of that. And that's, the U.S. Forest Service, Wisconsin DNR grant funding. Those are avenues that you should be looking at in terms of, do you need something to help with that financial push to get it off the ground? Now that there's more and more communities doing this type of stuff, I think there's a lot more backing towards it. And so you can maybe get a jump start without necessarily having to, get grant funding all the time, because there's proof out there, proof
Right.
of concept, that sort of thing. So I think that's only going to be more and more helpful, especially as more and more of these programs are put in place. But really, it kind of just takes a jump. I think staff wise, like, you know, like I said, I was in the field when this was all implemented. I was the one taking down the trees and doing stuff like that. It may be a little bit of a, you know, a cynical, pessimistic view at first, like, well, is this really going to work? Are we just spinning our wheels? But from the standpoint of an employee out there doing that, you want to see this. You feel the waste going on when you see all this, you know, this great lumber or, you know, these big trees going to waste. And so you want it to work. From that standpoint, I don't think organizationally getting your people to try to buy in is that big of a stretch. They might have disagreements on how to make it work or what may or may not work so well and what might be silly. But they want to see it work because, you know, we're in this industry for a lot of reasons, but one of them is, you know, we love trees and we want to see them, you know, live their fullest life, but then also be utilized to their, you know, greatest extent, even at the end of their lives.
That makes sense. Dwayne, anything you would add?
Boy, that's a loaded question, Leslie. I appreciate what you said about kind of the circle, and I have a long history here going back to Milwaukee's early days, and I've seen the attitudes that many have. And at the risk of saying something that might be upsetting to others, if the attitude or spirit of the community is revenue generation, plans are short-lived. And to be perfectly blunt and frank, arborists are some of the best people that I know in my life. If they can focus on what they do best and transfer a need to others who do what they do best, things are successful. It's co-beneficial. And that is an attitude here in the United States that doesn't always exist. But as Jeff said, this is proof of concept because we're helping, the Urban Wood Network is helping communities find a destination for their trees, a higher use destination. At the same time, we're helping an entire architects who are focused on trying to be more sustainable and thoughtful about the materials. We're helping them achieve their goals. We're helping someone who wants to mill this process achieve their goals. A furniture manufacturer who has sustainability and stewardship on their mind, we're helping them achieve their goals. And it's linking everybody together to identify what is their role in the end product, which is a healthier world, on and on and on. So where do I begin and where do I stop talking? That is it. But if we stay in a circle and keep it and pay attention to our neighbor ahead of us and one behind us, this will be successful. And as corny as that sounds, that's typically the missing link in a non-successful or short-lived utilization plan. So we are helping each other.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think aiming at that end goal, Jeff, you were talking about that we all are trying to get to the same thing. We don't want waste or whatever it might be, kind of trying to rally around that. I really appreciate those perspectives. We are well past the top of the hour, so I think we better wrap. It sounds like we all need to go over to the Urban Wood Network site and see who might be in our location and kind of start there, trying to find some partners on this, and then take that from the next step. And it sounds like reach out to you, Dwayne. Hopefully reach out to Jeff if you have any questions. The CEU form, I think, is working now. We will follow up in an email after this. Otherwise, thank you to our members for being here today. If you're not a member, please join when the time is right, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye.